of the POK, that is the Pakistan occupied Kashmir territory, which is part of Jammu Kashmir, but due to our mistakes or folly, we froze the matter when we could have taken the whole of Kashmir in 1947. The immediate provocation for the urgency, which caused the urgency for discussing this subject, is the February 29th, 2020 agreement between the United States and Taliban. Now, Taliban is not a part of any government. It was, in fact, an enemy of the United States. The United States, after that 9/11 atrocity, actually bombarded Afghanistan when Taliban was in power and decimated a big proportion of their armed forces and made them run into the hills. And then now, after 18 years, the Americans seem to have got tired. And Trump has committed to withdraw his troops from abroad and where it's been unduly long. And so the Americans have agreed in a treaty to clear out from Afghanistan completely in 14 months and a major share within the next 2 months. So in effect, although there is an elected government in Afghanistan, and that elected government, the personnel have been generally sympathetic to India because India has done a lot of civilian work in Afghanistan. They have built even the Library of Parliament there. They have assisted in schools, medicines, and so on. So, and Indians generally have long association. Afghanis, our Bombay film music cassettes sell like hotcakes in Afghanistan. So, I mean, India has a presence, but it's not a military presence. What has happened in this agreement between the United States and Taliban is that it was brokered by Pakistan. And it came only after the United States had made an offer to India to post maybe a division or two divisions in Afghanistan. And in return, India could pick any arms, weapons, planes from the warehouses of America. Our government declined that. That is, the BJP government declined that. And as a consequence, the Americans, in pursuit of their objective to get out from Afghanistan, they contacted Pakistan, and Pakistan helped them with Taliban. And ultimately in Qatar, in Doha, they met and signed an agreement. Now, once this process is completed in the next 14 months, I think it stands to reason, given the ground situation, that Taliban will be able to forcibly take over Afghanistan. And therefore, Afghanistan, Pakistan will become allies. And India then has a problem. We have problems about the terrorists infiltration from Pakistan, and now it will be doubled. So it's a matter of great concern. So what do we do? Do we dare to make any preemptive action? And if so, what kind of action? Is doing nothing an option? Or is that very dangerous for our national security? And these are questions that are being asked around the country, and we need to find answers for that, and which is why we have this discussion today. We also, in February 22nd, 1994, in a parliament resolution of both houses, and unanimously, resolved that the remaining portions of Kashmir in the foreign occupation will be retrieved by India. And so, obviously, the first candidate would be the Pakistan occupied Kashmir, or popularly known as POK. And the question is whether we are in a position to do it. In 1947, we went as far as Muzaffarabad. In fact, our flag was to be hoisted, but the English commander of our troops at that time, it was a hangover still continuing. He mischievously hoisted the Pakistani flag instead of the Indian flag, although the Indian troops were all there. But meantime, Jawaharlal Nehru went to the United Nations and we had to withdraw our troops. And so Muzaffarabad and all these other parts of POK is now in the occupation of Pakistan. So to liberate that, are we in a position today militarily? Is it, if not, what are the things that we need to fill the gaps in? Is it a worthwhile objective to restore it? I know emotionally it is widely held in India that it must be done. After all, otherwise Parliament wouldn't be passing that resolution. It was, in a sense, a a forgotten issue. But Narasimha Rao, evoked it again and got this resolution passed. So we are in this situation where we need the military mind to tell us what are the pros and cons and costs and benefits of securing ourselves, what needs to be done, and how do we back it up on the ground with preparation. So for that, all of us in our team felt that the best person to be invited is Major Arya, and because he is not only a military man, but he has also done strategic studies, and he is well versed in the literature of military literature. And I think, if I'm not wrong, he has something to do with the strategic division of the Republic TV, where he speaks on this issue. So I request Major Arya to please tell us on these two subjects, how should we go about securing our national security?
First of all, thank you, Dr. Swamy, for inviting me. It's a great honor and privilege. You mentioned about Afghanistan, what should be a military strategy, and then you spoke about POK. Is it retrievable or not retrievable? Yes. For a very long time, until recently, as recent as 3 or 4 years back, I have held that India should have nothing to do with Afghanistan. And today I take this opportunity to actually say that I was wrong. You cannot say that we are not interested in war. War is interested in us. For a very long time, it has been held that Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires. Be that as it may, sir. The thing is that...
just interruption, not for Ranjit Singh.
Yes, not for Ranjit Singh. You're very right. So what has actually happened is very recently, the Afghan Taliban said that after Eid, they will launch jihad inside India. They threatened India. And as you very rightly mentioned, Dr. Swamiji, that this entire deal that has been brokered by Pakistan is also because there are many factors, but one of the factors is that traditionally Pakistan has been looking for strategic depth. That was the reason why it started this entire terrorism in Kashmir, started terrorism in our Punjab with the bogey of Khalistan, etc. And it is the same thing that it's trying to do with the Jundullah terrorist organization in Iran, and a similar tactics is being played out in Afghanistan beyond the Durand line. Now, what we must do is understand 2-3 things, and this is what comes to mind, sir. Number one, the Americans will leave, and when they leave, there will be a vacuum. The Taliban will take over in all probability. Pakistan is broke, and Afghanistan has a lot of mineral wealth. The one nation that can take advantage is China. So we're looking at a very poisonous cocktail of the Taliban, who are Islamists and religious fanatics. We're looking at Pakistan, which is a nuclear state and highly unstable, and then we're looking at China. Now, none of these are our friends. None of these are our friends. We have to move into Afghanistan. Simply building libraries and their parliament and dams and hospitals will not do. And for a very long time, sir, I've held that, don't go to Afghanistan. But if we don't go to Afghanistan, Afghanistan will come to us.
Yes, right.
It is not simply, sir, a factor of, as many people say that we get a road to go into Central Asia. That is one part of it, which is why the Chabahar port is there, and which is why our understanding with Iran is present. But also the fact that a dangerous and unstable Afghanistan is dangerous even for India. How do we put in troops? Can we put in troops? It would largely, I would say, but I will have to qualify it, sir. I say yes, number one. But how to do it? If we get a guaranteed way in and out. In the army, we call them lines of communication and supply. For example, we know that various times when America used the Karachi port, and all through Pakistan, they used to put or send their military material, to go deep inside Afghanistan through the Torkham Gate. Whenever they had a problem with Pakistan, Pakistan would, so to say, switch off the tap. And then the Americans would have to spend billions of dollars sending it by air. So this is one danger that we would like. And secondly, also the fact that Afghanistan has always been unstable. What America did wrong was they tried to stabilize Afghanistan. Now, we are people, America doesn't have too much of a history anyway. They are a very, very young nation. India is thousands and thousands of years old, and we have our books to tell us that if Afghanistan is unstable, let it remain unstable. Let us find stability within that instability. Dr. Swamy, sir, I don't know if I'm making sense here, but what I'm trying to say
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I'm trying to say is that don't try to reform Afghanistan. Don't try to say that there will be a democracy. Karzai has been known very widely as the mayor of Afghanistan, or mayor of Kabul, rather. He used to be called the mayor of Kabul, and Karzai would be called the mayor of Kabul. That is because the Americans have traditionally wanted to bring democracy. Afghanistan does not want democracy.
Yes.
The Afghans have traditionally respected force, sir.
Yes.
So let us understand what they respect and what they want.
Yes.
And this is one part of it, sir. And I think it's only a matter of time, months or years, before India will have to send some sort of military manpower inside Afghanistan. I do not know what the construct of that force will be and how the ingress and egress routes or entering and exiting will be managed. Yes. But I don't think we can avoid it for too long, sir. I don't think we can avoid it for too long.
Right.
And Jay. And as far as the POK things that you mentioned about the parliamentary resolution,
yes,
for Pakistan occupied Kashmir, a lot of it has to do with emotions. You're very right in India that we must take over. Actually, Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan is where the China-Pakistan economic corridor actually comes.
Yes.
China has already pumped in around $50 billion, and they aim to pump in many more $1 billion into this. Before we went live, sir, we were speaking about the Malacca Straits, and we were speaking about how this is very important. And this is an aim by China to find an alternate route for its energy supplies, for sending its finished goods to the Middle East, etc., all over the world. This is an alternate route. The economic corridor will never come up like the way Pakistanis think it will. They think it's a gold mine. They think it's something that will create jobs and make Pakistan a rich country. They clearly don't understand China the way you do, Dr. Swamy, sir. You understand China. You understand the language. They don't understand China. It seems that. So I think the solution here is, yes, we must take over POK. It will be a mixture of diplomacy. It must be a mixture of economic sanctions. And it will also be about destabilizing Pakistan from within. There are fault lines within Pakistan. The Shia-Sunni divide, the Deobandi-Barelvi divide. There are the Seveners, there are the Twelvers, there are the Ahle Hadith. And there are so many other people. There is the Baloch freedom struggle that is happening. The Sindhis are waking up. The Muhajirs are there. Even the southern Punjab, the Saraiki region is waking up. So everybody is pulling at the seams. And as I say very often, sir, Pakistan will never explode, but there is every chance of Pakistan imploding. A lot of Indians who are part of the so-called Aman Ki Asha Brigade, who mean well, but I think they're slightly woolly-headed. They think that, if you speak nicely to Pakistan, everything will be okay. I think, Dr. Swamy, sir, the more you hammer Pakistan, the better it is going to be. As long as we keep on hammering them into the ground, we will be safe. As far as POK is concerned, sir, we get POK by destabilizing Pakistan. We are not going to ask our 14, 15, and 16 Corps of the Northern Command to walk into Pakistan. There is a certain nuclear threshold that Pakistan has.
Yes.
And there are enough crazy people inside Pakistan who may at least threaten to use it so that the international community starts interfering, if not actually use it, sir.
Yeah.
Destabilize Pakistan, sir. And then approach it from that direction is what I would think.
Right. Well, Major, let me now ask you some hypothetical questions. Do you think we are in a position to create a situation where Baluchistan decides to secede from Pakistan?
So, yes and no. When I say yes, I mean that there are enough elements within the Baloch society which do not want anything to do with Pakistan. And they also know Baloch, because I have many Baloch friends and I'm in touch with them, both inside Pakistan and abroad. And Dr. Swamy, one thing they're very clear about is that nationalism, Baloch nationalism has so far trumped radical Islam in Balochistan.
Yes.
There is a very strong Pashtun element. There are Pashtuns inside Balochistan. And then there is the Balochistan, which is inside Iran. So Balochistan is divided between Iran and Pakistan. If we forget about the Iranian part for a minute, sir, hypothetically speaking, yes, it is possible. Yes, it is possible. But India needs to do more than talk. So far, we have been talking only, sir. We are all hot here, sir. Unfortunately.
That's our weakness. That's our weakness.
Absolutely, sir. We announce that Balochistan will be free. It's not going to be free unless we put our money where the mouth is. Whether it's about training the Balochis, whether it's about setting up a Baloch embassy in exile in India, or the government in exile in India, my apologies. Whether it's about creating embassies all over the world, whether it's about going to Harvard, Oxford, these top universities, and actually speaking about Baloch, it's not going to happen, sir.
Yeah, I found in United States, in New York, the Baluchis have been given permission by the United States government to open a human rights center to highlight atrocities, human rights atrocities in Baluchistan. I think we can easily do the same thing, and the Pakistanis can't object. We'll say, you didn't object to the Americans, why are you objecting to us? So that would be a first step, because we raised hopes when Narendra Modi on 15th August in 2015 from Red Fort announced how Baluchistan is being suppressed, and raised and said that we would, we are concerned about it. So there was a lot of expectation, which, broke all limits in terms of expectations. And then nothing happened. So I agree with you. We talk a lot, but won't do anything. But whether would you think that psychologically, if there was a movement where we took a small step like setting up a human rights center of Baluchis in Delhi, whether that would intimidate Pakistan or not?
To a little extent, yes. So Pakistan is the only country that I know which suffers from schizophrenia, so the entire country. The way it happens is that Pakistan at one level has a civilian facade who will go and address these issues like the United Nations, etc. But the power is actually, as you know very well, Dr. Swamy, the power is with General Bajwa, it's with the army.
Yes.
And the army doesn't care what happens. So definitely setting up a human rights cell in India, in New Delhi, will be a welcome first step. But it will be a step in a series of steps that India must. Dr. Swamy,
I agree. What I'm saying is we have not even taken the first step, and this is an easy step to take.
Yes.
And it will, in terms of atmosphere, it will make a difference. And then you have to follow it up with other steps. Um, Let me ask you another question. Um, well, there's no doubt that if Taliban takes over and then it advances the cause of Islamic terror, United States is going to be nervous. It's not that the United States could not be penetrated. After all, the 9/11 incident clearly shows that the United States was penetrated. People who had gone there to take lessons in how to fly an aeroplane, yeah, afterwards converted them into suicide bombers.
Yes.
So United States could, and the United States had shown interest both in terms of in time of Iraq and now that they would like to partner with India in tackling these hotspots. So should India be proactive and explore with the United States this possibility, or do you think that we could uh, uh, start probing the Chinese to see whether they would have an informal understanding with us on this issue? My own visits to China, which have been quite regular in the last 30 years, um, suggest that the Chinese, when their guard is down, are resentful of the fact that in Xinjiang, terrorists trained in Pakistan have found their way through the Karakoram Pass to Xinjiang. And to me at least, because of my long-term association with them, they have been frank in stating that they are disappointed with Pakistan on this issue. Um, However, the Chinese, according to me, are concerned what India will do if there is a confrontation between China and the United States. I may take the liberty to mention that in 1977, when Mr. Moraji Desai asked me that since it said that you are, I've been told that you have studied China very extensively, you speak the language. Could you tell me whether the Chinese would ever be interested in discussing the border problem with us? Because they were taking the stand at that time, there's nothing to discuss, it's all ours. So I suggested that at that stage, there was a huge confrontation between the Soviet Union, then Soviet Union, and China over an island called Janbadao on the Ussuri River. And the Russians had prepared very substantially to use military force and give a thrashing to the Chinese army. And for that, they had written to India saying that using the Indo-Soviet treaty, that Russian troops should be allowed to come into India and then go to Tibet from India, the underbelly of China, so to speak. And by the time this matter reached some kind of peak, Mrs. Gandhi was defeated here, and Mr. Desai became Prime Minister. So I told him that if you convey to the Chinese that in the event there is a confrontation between the Soviets and China, troops on the ground, India will be neutral. And in that case, the Chinese would be willing to discuss with us the border question as a gesture. And that's how I made my first official trip after 1962. I was the first Indian politician formally on behalf of the government to go to China. Mr. Vajpayee went a year later as foreign minister. And I put this to them and they responded immediately. And the thawing with China started with that. I'm in a minority, an hopeless minority, when I suggest that it is possible that in dealing with terror in Pakistan and Afghanistan, it is possible to bring the Chinese on board. But it will not be just a bilateral matter only. It will be an international matter in which our relations with the United States, and in the event of their confrontation with China, the United States, the role India plays will be a factor. I don't know whether the country is ready to accept that, because After 1962, it has been thoroughly, we have been thoroughly brainwashed that the entire thing was a perfidy of China, like this corona virus is also being entirely ascribed to China. So it may take a lot of persuasion. I also have been successful in getting them to open Kailash Mansarovar. And on the border roads, in my discussion with China in the last 2 years, when I said, why do you want to go through POK? You come down from where Kailash Mansarovar is, cross into Uttar Pradesh, and then go straight to Bombay. And then you get the ocean. Or you come from Kunming via Rangoon uh, and then to Calcutta and then get the ocean. And they were very, very enthusiastic about that. They said, yes, we'd like to discuss that. So we have two options. Either we decide to make an agreement with the Americans that we'll send the troops and they give us the weapons. Or with the Chinese, that the two of us have to deal with Pakistan. And we have to make sure that the government of Afghanistan is an independent government and not a terrorist government, because that will affect their Xinjiang also. They will also have this problem. So I am sorry to take up so much of your time, but the fact is, I'm saying that you are now in a situation where you just more or less painted a stalemate. That we should do this, but are we going to do this? Have we got the wherewithal to do it? So now I'm suggesting you another way